What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and we are continuing our 2022 schedule previews and early projected records here with the USC Trojans. This is not going to give you an official prediction, just a projection based off the schedule. So we'll take a look at how tough the schedule is, and then we'll give you a projection based off of that. Before we get into 2022, let's look back at 2021. Here is the schedule from 2021 for USC. They played San Jose State in the non-conference. They also played Notre Dame, played them on the road, and they played BYU. BYU wound up being better than I think most people expected. So you had two tough games in the non-conference with Notre Dame and BYU. Lost both of those games. Look at who USC played out of the North. They played Stanford. That was a loss. They had Washington State, Oregon State, and then in their other game they played Cal on the road. So that was the schedule out of the North. A schedule that was actually pretty favorable. They didn't play Washington. They didn't play Oregon, even though Washington wound up being pretty bad. But going into the year, we thought Washington was going to be better, but they did avoid playing Oregon. So it was a pretty favorable schedule in the Pac-12. Did have two tough non-conference games, but the schedule was really not the reason why they went 4-8. It wasn't because they had just a crazy hard schedule. Let's look now at 2022. And before we go game by game, let's look at who they play outside of their division, because of course we know USC will play every Pac-12 South team, but in the non-conference they'll play Rice, Fresno State, and Notre Dame. So you trade, basically trading BYU for Fresno State as far as kind of a similar matchup. I think I'd rather play Fresno State than BYU, especially this year. So not too bad there, and then they get Notre Dame at home, and they're going to play Notre Dame every year. So that's why USC's non-conference schedule can be really tricky. You have Notre Dame, and then if they do schedule another tough game, you've got two really tough games in the non-conference. But Fresno State, kind of a mid-level game, and then Rice should be a pretty easy win. And getting Notre Dame at home could be big. Look at who they play outside of in the Pac-12 North. They'll play Stanford on the road. They'll play Oregon State on the road. Oregon State could be a sneaky good team this year. Watch out for them. Washington State at home, and then Cal at home. Cal is a team that lost a bunch of close games last year. We'll see if they turn things around this year. But all in all, it's not too bad. You once again avoid Oregon, and I think that's the one team you want to avoid out of the North. It's Oregon, and USC will avoid that team this upcoming season. So going game by game, they start with Rice on September the 3rd. Then they'll play Stanford on the road September the 10th. They always play Stanford early in the year for whatever reason. Fresno State there on September the 17th, and then back to conference play for Oregon State on the road September 24th. So you look at those first four games, first month of the season, it's a manageable schedule. Games that USC has a chance to win, they could win all four of those games, but tricky games as well. Stanford and Oregon State on the road, those won't be easy wins. So, USC could start anywhere from 4-0 to 2-2, and that first month is really, I think, going to set the tone for the entire season. You go into the month of October, you got back-to-back home games, Arizona State and Washington State. Similar to Stanford and Oregon State, going to be games where USC can absolutely win, but they will be challenges. And if they are able to win all these games, you could see USC realistically starting off this year 6-0. I mean, before the schedule really gets all that tough, this team could be 6-0. That Utah game going to be very tough on October the 15th on the road. Maybe the best team in the Pac-12 this year. Then they have Arizona on the 29th. They get a bye week between Utah and Arizona. Maybe not the perfect spot for a bye week. But Arizona is a team that's improving. You never know. That game's on the road. And then they have Cal on November the 5th. That'll be a home game for USC. Colorado also a home game on the 11th. And then they'll play UCLA on November 19th. And that Colorado game, by the way, I think is a Friday night game. They'll play UCLA on the 19th on the road. That should be a big one there. If both teams could still be in contention in the Pac-12 South, that could turn out to be a really big game. We'll see where all the teams wind up being, in the standings. And they'll close it out with Notre Dame, a game that they'll have at home. So you've got 5 road games. They'll play 4, and that's the way their schedule always kind of lines up. You take the 9 conference games, and then you throw Notre Dame in there, and they're going to have 5 home, 5 away. So if they play Notre Dame on the road, that means they're going to have 5 home games in the conference and 4 road games. So they'll always be kind of split up that way. So they will have 5 conference games on the road this year. But again, it's a schedule that it's tricky. You've got some challenges here, but definitely a lot of winnable games for USC, and you could see that 4-8 record really turn around if they're able to win some close games, because they're probably going to have a lot of close games, competitive games here on this schedule. Utah, probably their toughest game. Notre Dame will be tough. Other than that, though, USC has a great chance to win these other games. Can they actually go out and do it consistently? That's obviously another thing, but a very manageable schedule for USC in 2022. Here were the projections from 2021. Of course, USC way below the projections at 4-8, just a terrible season. Our projection was 8-4. So doing what we're about to do in this video, the projection was 8-4. I predicted this team to go 9-3, so I was even higher on the team. FBI had them with 8.6 wins, 8.6 and 3.9. Over/under was at 9, so our projection was actually more accurate than anything else, even though it still was way over what they did. And no one really expected USC to go 4-8 last season. It was a pretty big shock, but new coach, bunch of new players. It's a new season for USC, and we are projecting this team as if they're maybe not on the Utah level, but they're on that next tier in the Pac-12 South. So that's kind of how I'm projecting it. It's hard to do with teams like USC that have so much turnover, but they have the talent, I think, to be right there in that tier below Utah, and possibly even rise up to Utah's level. They have the potential, but I don't think we can jump the gun and say that just yet. So again, here's the schedule. This is the scale that we will use. You see your games in white. Those will basically be 50-50 games where I think the spread's going to be 3 or 4 points or less. Less than 20%, over 80%. Those are games where I think a team is going to be favored by 14 plus points. It should be an easy win or almost an automatic loss. Not a guaranteed win necessarily. Your orange and blue, 20 to 29%, 71 to 80%. Those are games where I think a team's going to be favored by double digits, 10 to 14 points, somewhere in that range. 61 to 70%, 30 to 39%. That's where I think the spread will be about a touchdown. So that's one way to look at this as we do these projections. So the easy wins for USC, I think there's really only one. I think Rice is a game that they have a more than 80% chance to win, probably closer to 100% than 80. Should be an easy win for them. But that's it. You look at the rest of the schedule, and I don't really see anywhere else on the schedule where I'm going to say, yeah, USC's definitely winning that game. There are other games where I think they probably will win. And again, these games are in that blue range, 71 to 80%. Games where I think USC will be favored by 10 to 14 points. And I think you've got Fresno State, you've got Washington State, Arizona, and Colorado in this category. Fresno State, a very good Group of 5 team out of the Mountain West. I don't think you can count that as an automatic win. I do think USC will be favored again by double digits, but not an automatic win. I think it's in that blue range. Washington State figures to be towards the bottom of the Pac-12. Same with Arizona, same with Colorado. Arizona's a little tricky. They've got some good young talent. That game's on the road, but I still think I feel pretty confident in putting that game in the blue. And they could lose the blue game. Keep in mind, when we do the projection, we give them a 75% chance to win these games in blue. So that does leave a 25% chance that USC would lose. And with 4 of these games, the percentages would tell you that USC probably would lose one of these 4 games. Not saying they will, but that's just what the percentages would say. Let's go now to the purple games. All right, so we've got Arizona State and Cal. I think USC will be about a touchdown favorite in both games. Cal lost a lot of close games last year. I think they'll be better this year. Arizona State with no Jaden Daniels is interesting. Maybe that should bump this into the blue. It is a home game. But still, I think there's enough talent on that Arizona State team to where they're kind of in that second tier in the Pac-12 South, along with USC, along with UCLA. But at home, I'm going to give USC the purple here, 61 to 70%. Games where I think they'll be underdogs, I think we've got Utah and we've got Notre Dame. A couple of games where I think they're going to be, about a touchdown underdog. Utah on the road, very tough game. Notre Dame's going to be a tough one. Most people are expecting Notre Dame to be a top 10 team preseason. USC is a team that is borderline top 25 preseason. So even though it's at home, I think we can say that Notre Dame will be favored in this game. And then the rest of the schedule, I think you got 3 50-50 games here. Stanford on the road, Oregon State on the road, UCLA on the road. I think USC is probably more talented than all 3 of these teams, but when you look at the fact that these games are on the road, I think there's enough there for Stanford, Oregon State, and UCLA to say that these games could really go either way. I think Oregon State is a dangerous team actually this year in the Pac-12. very underrated. Stanford beat USC last year. UCLA is a pretty talented team. So, yeah, those are the 3 games that are probably going to swing the season one way or the other. If they take care of business in these blue games and in these purple games, and even if they lose to Utah and Notre Dame, if you win these 50-50 games, you still have a chance to go 10-2, and that's a really good year, I think, in year 1 under Lincoln Riley. So 3 50-50 games, but when you average everything out, the projection for USC comes out to 8-4. So an 8-4 projection for USC, exact same projection as last season. Now, this was actually, the projection was actually 7.5 and 4.5. It was right down the middle between 7-5 and 8-4. So I want to make sure I let you know that it was, we're not going to do half games, but it was in between 7.5 and 8, and between 7 and 8 wins. So 7.5 wins is what the projection, what the average would show. But when I look at the schedule and I see that they have more of these games that they're favored in, that's why I'm going to lean it up and go to 8-4. But a 7-5 projection, I think, would also be fair for USC. So you're looking at 7-5 or 8-4. Anything under 7-5, I think, is a very disappointing season. If they get over 8-4, I think it's a really good season for USC. So what do you think? Do you think this projection is fair? Are you more in line with 7-5 or 8-4, or maybe higher or maybe lower? Give me your thoughts down in the comments below.